Morning, everyone. Welcome to the session of this postgraduate series talk. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear.
You can, right? The rest?
Yes, can, Doctor.
Can, huh? All right. So
Yes,
I will
I can
start
hear.
now. I try to put my volume louder, so hopefully everyone can hear. I suppose everyone are the PhD students or master students. Also, we have it here. So, all right. I just want to quickly check. Is there any master students here? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but any master student here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so in that sense, I'm going to cover both, all right? There's not much difference between PhD oral examination versus master by research oral examination. Yeah, all right, so I will start now. Let me put on my slides. Can you see my slides? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, all right. So today we are talking about doctoral oral examination. I think based on my observations, right, many of the students are very focused on the thesis, proposal defense, and then writing data collections, and then your pre-viva presentations, then your viva, or that so-called oral examination. However, I find that through my experience, there's not much discussion or knowledge being shared with the student in terms of what is doctorate oral examination. And therefore, today, I'm going to share with you, right, the purpose of having this oral examination. How do you prepare? What are the expectations? What are the checklists for you to prepare before the oral examination? And during the viva or oral examination, how does the student respond during the discussion with the examiners? And as a student, you should also know the roles of examiners. What are the parameters that examiners will use to question you or in the form of discussion? And finally, towards the end of your oral examination, what are the possible outcomes? And of course, there are some changes. And how do you make sure you make the right changes together with your supervisor? Yeah. And you are welcome to stop me, or you can actually also write in the chat box for Q&A, right? So I have 20 slides here to share with you, right? So let's start with oral examination. Oral examination is part of the thesis assessment. Remember, when you complete either your master by research or PhD, your thesis will be evaluated by internal and external examiner, right? So they will evaluate based on your thesis submitted, but in UMS, you still need to go through oral examinations, yeah? So, and to do that, you need to understand what are the parameters of oral examination, what are the common questions asked, what are the roles of the student and the internal, external examiner, how do you prepare before viva, during and after, what kind of question, not asking the right questions, and how do you address examiner's concern? That means when the examiner asking you the question, how do you respond? And one of the very popular question for oral examination towards the end is the examiner will ask you, if you repeat the research, what would you do differently? So this is a very hypothetical question, but examiner are expecting you to answer in a logical, justified manner. Yeah. So let's start with what is PhD or Master Oral Examination. In the case of PhD, it's the highest level of degree that a student can attain, right? That means it's the highest. So in this sense, you need to perform, you need to show that your thesis, your PhD thesis is making a very meaningful new contribution in the research area that your thesis is being put in, right? So what does it mean? For example, you do consumer behavior, right? So what are the new contribution and within the consumer behavior field or discipline? Yeah. Third, oral examination means the examiners are trying to engage and assess the independency of the student to conduct original and significant research, whether you are capable of conducting the research independently without the the assistance for others. And fourth, the oral examination is actually part of the assessment to determine the quality and originality of the argument that you present in your thesis. So in this case, to attend to receive your PhD, you have two parts. One is your thesis examination, one is your oral examination. In fact, oral examination is equally important in terms of the thesis examination, yeah, in the hard copy. So, right, so when you submit your thesis, right, it means that piece of thesis is ready to be read, scrutinized by an expert in the field, right? So that is the time the supervisor will say, okay, it's time to submit. So this submission is equally similar to when you try to submit an article for publication. So the reviewer will review the same process. Yeah. So this implies that it is not the completion of your study yet. You need to go through oral examination. Yeah. So what are the purpose? So most oral examination, right, have two parts. When you go for your oral examination or your viva presentation, first you need to prepare your presentation in the form of slides, right? Then follow with the question and discussion session, right? So what is oral examination? Is to defend your thesis, right? And it's a form of academic discussion, right? You are discussing with your expert, the examiner, internal and external. So you are communicating your finding to the expert, and the expert will give you the opportunity to defend, right, your thesis in the form of question and answer. And at times there are few points unclear. This is the time for you to explain to the examiners. Yeah. And also this oral examination will allow the examiners to check whether you actually understand the topic properly and clearly, and to ascertain, to confirm that this is your own thesis, you have written it. Yeah. And sometimes the examiner will want you to describe how you complete this thesis. Yeah. So you shouldn't be panicked if you know your thesis very well, and if you are prepared and you have gone through more oral examination with your supervisor, then you should be enjoying and sort of like be proud of your work that you have completed, and to be present to the examiner who are expert in this field, right? So what is the assessment of your oral examination? So as you present your slides and then the question and answer, examiners have some kind of learning outcome wanted to achieve, right? From the examiner's perspective, there are specific outcomes. I will go through with you later on the parameter, right? So the examiner will assess or to test to ensure the student's ability to explain their thesis project and from the scientific logical manner, and also propose alternative approaches if necessary. That's why just now I asked you, if you are going to do the research repeat again, what would you do, right? And assessment means to verify the student's research is her own work and contribution to the knowledge. So basically, oral examination is to inform the student, need to inform the examiner what are your contribution, how do you do this research, and to show that you are competent, to show that this is your research, this is you have written the thesis by yourself, right? So you need to demonstrate ability to explain and defend the thesis and the contribution, right? Understand the picture of the research. That means the process of the research, starting with the research background, identify the research gap, then set the research question, then research methodology. Why do you choose interview? Why do you choose qualitative? How do you interpret the data? What are the findings? How does this finding contribute to the knowledge? And another thing is assessment of your oral examination implies that you are able to answer the question satisfactorily. Yeah. So the examiner are competent. I feel very competent on you. So here are the checklists for your thesis defense in the oral examination. First and foremost, you need to read your thesis and know it well. I know you have submitted your thesis, waiting for 3 months, within 1 to 3 months for your defense, right? Oral examination, you may forgotten. So you need to go through your thesis thoroughly and thoroughly and know it very well. And I would encourage you for every chapter, 5 chapters, write 1-page summary about that chapter. Right? So you need to, that 1 page of summary is the important points, because during the oral examination, you may have forgotten. And this is also to make sure that you actually understand and know very well the chapters contribute, the gist of the chapter. And mark the thesis, right? Just in case you say, okay, I may forgot this, take the thesis, mark it, and this will help you during the oral examination. Another thing that you need to think of is the potential question that examiners will ask. You may consult your supervisor, or based on your past experience by attending, the pre-viva session, then you will be able to, come up with the list of potential questions, likely to be asked by the examiner. And then you also need to know which are the areas that thesis will be challenged by your examiner, right? And also, you need to explain how your thesis fit into a bigger picture. Means if your thesis is within the context of consumer behavior, then how does this fit or contribute or into the consumer behavior discipline? Yeah. For example, if you do, if your thesis is about tourism planning, so how does it fit into the planning discipline within the tourism context that actually contribute a new finding? Yeah, and you need to keep reading the relevant literature review, right, updated, even though you have submitted your thesis, because the examiner may likely to ask you what are the latest literature review related to your thesis. Yeah, so in the sense that as long as you have not completed your oral examination, your PhD study is not completed yet. Yeah, and next is the most important thing at the PhD level. What are your theoretical, managerial, or practical implication of your research? You need to, this is a contribution aspect. You need to be able to identify, explain, and provide evidence or example. Yeah? And I'm not sure many of the students who has done any mock viva or oral examination with your supervisor or main supervisor. Of course, before you are allowed to do your viva defense, the faculty will definitely have a pre-viva session. But my encouragement is that before your pre-viva session, you should have another mock viva with your supervisor, yeah, so that you are much prepared. Next, talk to the people who has passed their viva, right? Share, talk to your senior or your lecturers, in terms of what is it like, during the viva, and what are the possible questions and how do you prepare. Yeah? And of course, among yourself, the PhD student, you may ask your friends or somebody to challenge your thesis. Yeah? Because when you have third party to challenge you, it actually stimulates your mind to think further. Yeah? And explain your thesis to your friend, to your family members who are not familiar with it. So the more perspective or viewpoints you receive from others, like your peer, your friends, your family members, they can come out with some kind of very pertinent question that you never thought of. And this is a good approach for you to prepare. And finally, of course, you need to understand the guideline of your university. UMS have a specific guidelines for oral examination in terms of submission, in terms of process. And finally, I would encourage you to relax and enjoy the presentation, enjoy the discussion with your, what you call the examiner. So far, any questions? Do I have any questions, or I just continue? Yeah. I'm having problem with this. Can I move? Give me 1 minute. I have one question. Do we have to attend the oral examination? Oral examination. Examination is by okay. Give me 1 minute. I'm Okay, next, I'd like to share with you how to prepare for oral examination. Oral examination is equivalent, is actually Viva. Viva will say. So there are 5 important areas you need to think about it. First, for you to prepare well, you need to understand what is expected of you. So in this oral examination or Viva will say, you need to do your presentation. There is a discussion with the examiner, right? 2 parts. So next, you need to know your thesis inside out. As just now I mentioned, a good understanding of your thesis, what you have written, and your knowledge about this area. So you might want to recap on the background, right? The background of your research, what is your contribution, right? Original piece of work in the context. What does it mean, original piece of work? Means that your research is new. That is the novelty. Your research, you have identified the gap or the research problem that has not been empirically tested, or there's no support of empirical evidence. Yeah, so you know your thesis very well. You are able to explain to you what is your thesis about, who are the respondents, what method you use, and what are the findings, how does the finding contribute. Yeah. Third, anticipate the Viva question. So these are the 5 common questions that across any Viva will say or oral examination will be asked. What original contribution made? What is your thesis contribution? And sometimes they ask you, why do you want to study this particular topic? And they may ask you, what are your research questions? And have you achieved or able to answer all your research questions? Then you say yes, first research question is blah blah, and then the finding shows that. Second research question is this, what are the brief findings? Yeah, so you go, what are the strengths and weaknesses of your thesis? Yes, this is one of the very critical question to ask, so that you will be able to understand the strength of the thesis, means the contribution, the methodology, and what are the weaknesses of your thesis. Of course, in terms of qualitative, your sample size is not big, and you should be able to list out the strength and the weaknesses. If you are not able to do that, work out with your supervisor, discuss. If you have to start the thesis again, what would you do differently? So this is a very important question, popular, where they want to see your research capability. Are you able to do from the different approach? Maybe you do qualitative, later you suggest quantitative, and why do you say so, right? What are your plans for the future, right? Sometimes they ask, okay, after your completion of your thesis, what would you do? Yeah. Okay, so 4, learn about your examiner's own work. Okay, now in overseas, you will be able to know who are our examiners, like in UK, but in UMS, students may not be able to know who are the examiners, right? So of course, in this case, you can actually try to estimate that who are the popular academic or expert in the field of your study, right? So throughout literature review, literature search, you will know who are the popular experts in this field. So you need to look at probably the top 5 or the top 10, yeah? Understand and see how their works, your research work, has any connection with your research or your thesis, and how does that make difference? Yeah. So, and second point is also you want to look at is up-to-date theories, right? Read any updated articles related to the subject of your thesis, yeah? And help, you can also speak to any of your colleagues or classmates who has recently gone for Viva, right? How do they feel? Yeah? Think about how your work differentiates from the research carried out by others, which is very different. Yeah? If you are able to explain this and justify this in a proper, adequate manner, that means you have achieved the standard of being as a PhD candidate to complete. So many times try to support whatever your statement with evidences. Yeah, evidences here means you can cite any of the relevant researcher, right, or expert who've done that. Yeah? Don't just give a sweeping statement. Last point is plan towards the oral examination, or Viva will say. Avoid any situation may try not to feel stressed, all right? Turn around and make it a positive attitude. Yeah, you have complete. You have spent a lot of time to complete your thesis, which is not an easy journey. So, and of course, any research has limitation. Any thesis has limitation as well. So what I'm saying here is that you should be proud of yourself that you have come to this point ready for the expert to examine your thesis, your research. Yeah. So the examiner are here to hear and your explanation about your project. So you should have that kind of open and honest conversation about your work, right? And be polite to disagree with the examiners, especially on the area that you feel strongly about it. Yeah, don't offend the examiner because the examiner are the expert. Yeah, but sometimes what they say you may disagree with you. When you have such a disagreement, politely answer with support of evidences. Yeah. And try to use example from your thesis to back up what you're saying. For example, if you're not clear about it, then if you don't know the answer to a specific question, admit it. Sorry, I do not know. Yeah, I haven't think about this. And when you answer the questions, right, or provide any example or explanation, make sure it is clear, short, and precise and concise. Yeah. Always remember, no research is perfect. So you need to know the weaknesses. Yeah. And examiner will ask you a series of the questions, and some questions are very easy to answer and come to your mind. You can answer very fast. There are questions that you need more time to think and before answering. So you are allowed to think carefully before you answer. I just want to share with you one of my experience during my Viva, right? One of the examiner asked me, how do you know mosquito biting is painful? So this has nothing to do with my thesis finding, but it has to do with my research methodology, which is qualitative. So how do I answer this? Well, based on qualitative research, we use the word interpretation, right? So I will tell my answer back to the examiner was different people interpret differently. So some people will say painful, right? there are people who say, no, I don't feel anything. And another group of people will say, no, I enjoy it, I don't feel painful. So when the examiner asks you question, right, some question you can easily answer, the others you need to take time and think, does it relate to the methodology? Does it relate to my research background? Does it relate back to my finding or discussion or contribution? Yeah. Next, so what do you do during the oral examination? First thing, you must make sure as you enter the room, you must feel comfortable. So for example, your presentation at the podium, you need to check before the examiner come in, look at, whether the position is suitable at the um, within the room. Yeah, and you should feel relaxed, be thoughtful, and non-confrontation responses should be happening. Right? So if the room is too cold, you can inform the officer to readjust the aircon. Yeah, make it comfortable. So be prepared to discuss your strengths and weaknesses of your thesis, and any weaknesses can imply that it's an opportunity for you to show your critical evaluation on your thesis, even though you know that is a weaknesses. That's what examiners want to hear. And another thing, examiner is try to find and discuss the weaknesses of your thesis. Yeah? So do not feel that the criticism or the weaknesses highlighted by the examiner are negative. Yeah. Sometimes the examiner is trying to test you with your critical thinking on your thesis. So during the Viva again, you have a chairperson, and the chairperson normally will help you to set the Viva session in a fair and constructive manner. Yeah. So when you are not sure the question being asked, you can actually ask the examiners, do you mind to repeat the question again, so that I can understand it much better, or you can clarify the questions if you're not sure, or the question seems an ambiguous question. Yeah, take your time to think before answering, which is very important. Be prepared to ask questions and enter into a dialogue. That means the examiner will ask you a specific questions, and then you will have a conversation, right? Um, for example, how do you end up doing this research? What is it so important, right? So you have to have a dialogue section and discussion session, huh? And prepare to discuss your research in the context of other work done in your field. That means comparing your research with the past research or past study, and outline what are the differences and what are the similarities. Yeah? Admit if you don't know the answer to a question, and you can express your opinion. It's okay, because during the Viva or oral examination, it's not only to test you how much you know about your research and your thesis that you have written and the contribution, but also for you to demonstrate your competency in terms of the critical thinking, yeah, about your research. Okay, for instance, the examiner will say, why don't you do select quantitative method to as a data collection? Then you have to express your opinion. I choose qualitative research as a method for data collection because, based on the research objective, I need to explore, I need to explain why and how. And these are more suitable for me to use qualitative research, right? Of course, this research also can be, data collection can be conducted via quantitative research method, but the research objective have to revise to reflect quantitative, that is the relationship, to identify the factors, things like that. Yeah. So you can express your opinion. Yeah. So student responses during the discussion. Right. So now you have finished your presentation slides, which your supervisor have given you the key point to be included in your presentation slides presentation. So during the discussion, the first thing to do is you need to listen to the question very carefully, right? So that you give the right answer or understand the question. If you have doubt, ask for clarification or repeat the questions. Yeah, it's okay in a polite manner. The answer that you give must be clear, concise, precise, as I mentioned just now. So these are important to let the examiner see that you are confident in your answer, right? And how do you do that? Sometimes you may have a disagreement with the examiners. Then you say different people have different views, right? So you may say this, however, in the context of my thesis and research, here are my answer, right? And you should give enough evidence to support your argument, and also to convince the examiner that your way of thinking is acceptable. Way of thinking means your approach, your justification, your logical thinking must be to convince that yes, the examiner can accept. Yeah, and don't become overly defensive, and don't feel insulted if the examiner doesn't agree with what you're saying. Remember, every different people have different view, have different perspective. But what you need to do is to align back to your thesis. However, yes, I I accept what your opinion are. However, in the context of this thesis, I feel that these are my viewpoints, these are my justifications, and these are my logical approach. Yeah, keep calm and stay in the discussion mode. So don't show your angry or upset facial expression. Yeah, here during the oral presentation or Viva will say, you have to project confident and professional, because you are PhD is the highest degree in the academic world, right? So it's not only about your work, but the way you present yourself, the way you communicate, the way your facial expression is very important. Be professional. Right? And if you don't agree, you don't have to answer all the questions, right? But you need to know the way to approach your research question. Okay. So if the examiners if the examiner asking a question that hypothetical, that means just like a hypothesis, yes or no. So be smart enough to say my answer yes is because of this, no because of this. So it becomes neutral. And this is what examiner want to see, whether you have the open mind and your critical evaluation from different perspective, not only from one perspective. Yeah. So examiner are looking for students who can work independently, identify research topic, questions, and tackle and find the answer for the question. Right. So may give you hypothetical question. How would you tackle other aspect of your topic if you have time? right? So they may ask, this question means examiner is trying to test that, all right, you have done your research, you have completed your thesis. If you are given, you're supposed to continue to do your future research work. So what would you do? That's what implies. Then, what are the roles of the examiners? Okay, you need to understand also what will examiner ask, what kind of question, how do what are their responsibility during the oral examination. First, the examiner will read your thesis first when you submit, and they may give a recommendation of whether your work is worthy for, that means your work can be accepted to enable you to get a degree. Right? That was part of your written thesis. Then during the oral examination, which is your viva will say, they will ask you a lot of questions, and they will also assess based on your oral examination. So the first part is just one part of your thesis evaluation. Second part, which is your oral examination, they will see how you present your idea, how you present your thesis, how you answer the question, how um, how you respond to the list of the question, how you the way you present your critical analysis. And with that, towards the end of your discussion, they will write a report and comments again based on your oral examination or viva will say, here are the area the student need to improve further. That means it's a list of correction, yeah, and revision needed. During the viva, the supervisor will be in the session, and the supervisor are there to help you to write notes, comments from the examiner as well. And for you, question, if you have time, you also need to jot down, right? What are the critical notes or remarks or comment given by the examiner? So in simple terms, examiner will comment on your thesis, will ask you questions, right, during the viva, and then they will provide you further written reports during the viva. After the viva, they will come up with a list of question revision and for you to make correction. So what are examiners looking for? So in terms of thesis, they want to see how the student engaged with the literature review that has been presented in the thesis in a convincing manner. That means very justifiable, very convincing, very logical, analyze and engage with the finding. That means you have, based on a literature review, that you are presenting the right approach to carry out the data collection. Then your analysis, right, with your finding are consistent, and the thesis is a publishable. That means the thesis has some kind of worthiness to be published in a journal, right? And the publisher and making contribution to the literature, theories, and implication, right? So that's why I think most of you need to publish 2 articles based on your thesis. Yeah? And the examiner, most important thing, because PhD is the highest level of academic achievement. So examiners are particularly wanted to look at what kind of advancement and discovery of new knowledge within that discipline. That's very important. PhD is supposed to contribute a contribution of knowledge in terms of theory, in terms of managerial or practical or methodological. So what are the parameters of oral examination? It means what are the scope of viva voce. So examiner likely to cover, first of all, asking you the research background, right? Introduction. So in this, right, in this area, you need to discuss or mention how relevancy your research background relate to your research gap. So setting sound and relevant research background and present in a clear and adequate in your PowerPoint, or how you can present yourself, communicate it to your examiner, right? When it comes to literature review, right, completeness and relevant materials, and how this literature review is connected and linked or aligned to your research question or research objective is very important, right? So if you are doing consumer behavior, right, what are the consumer behavior is quite wide, right? Then you can look into consumer satisfaction. Then consumer satisfaction, you have to link to the past study. What have they found? And then what are the theory, underpinning theory? What are the concept? What are the variable measure? Right? And then all this literature review will enable you to come out with the research gap or issue. This is what the oral examination about your literature review. Sometimes the examiner say, have you looked at the recent literature review, or who are the experts in this field? They may ask you. Yeah? So your hypothesis or research question and objective must be consistent or well connected. Yeah? Your method must be sound, relevant, well justified, and written clearly. Sometimes you, in your method, you say, oh, I'm choosing qualitative. Then suddenly when come for data collection, you have a questionnaire, survey questionnaire, which is not consistent. Survey questionnaire is for quantitative, yeah, and justify why you choose, and supported by past study. So you also use qualitative research within this discipline. Implications, right, must be well explained. This is commonly done student in chapter, final chapter, very short, and did not go further in depth and provide example, right? So this is critical, and you need to double check your references are complete, updated, and well cited in the text. Organization of your thesis. When you present in your oral, also you make sure the flow across the section are connected and your arguments are logical. And what do we want to look at a piece of thesis in your oral examination is
Maybe it's just a blessing.
the importance and innovation, right? So examiner will want to see, based on your existing research and theory, what have you achieved, right? So you say, okay, I discovered this knowledge, I discovered this theory can be used to explain, or this theory cannot be used, this theory you need to add extra variables, or what are the shortcomings of this theory to use, right? So importance and innovation part. And finally, you must check your grammar, punctuation, spelling. No mistake, and follow UMS format, of course, you need to run your thesis Turnitin. So it's worth for you to pay for proofreading. Yeah, it's important to reduce. So finally, we have arrived towards the end of the oral examination, which is the Viva will say. So after your presentation complete of discussion, you will leave the room. Then the supervisor, the examiner, and the chairman will discuss based on your oral presentation and discussion. So they will come up with a conclusion. They will call you in and they will announce. So normally a thesis may pass, may fail, and may require revision. These are the three. But no correction is very rare cases. Yeah, so don't expect no correction. So chances is that you will be awarded within these four categories. The first is the minor correction. Okay. So based on the comment and correction list of corrections, right? Not mostly 1 to 2 pages or 3 pages. Then second category will be major correction or resubmission. So the thesis needs further work to be of doctoral standard. So you may need to do more rewriting, corrections, adding new literature reviews. Yeah. Third category is that suggestion that you resubmit and to be awarded with a lower degree. That means Master of Philosophy or Master of Science. In this case, what it means, your research is of quality but too narrow, did not meet the standard of doctorate. Yeah. Fourth means fail, below the PhD standard. And cases, for example, you copy somebody's work where examiner judge that your understanding of research process is very limited, and perhaps your thesis is not being written by you, or your data collection, you didn't collect the right data, your finding and discussion does not align with the research objective. Right? Okay. And so if you are given minor correction, major correction, or revision needed, so you must make sure making the right changes. Right? So here are the few steps that you need to take note. So take notes during the Viva and write them up immediately after. So immediately after your Viva or oral examination, check the notes that you have taken and also consult your supervisor. Right? And immediately try to meet with your supervisor to discuss what are the changes needed, because during that time your mind's still fresh. Don't wait. Yeah, do your correction, necessary changes as soon as possible. Then of course the faculty will give you, the postgraduate will give you the list of the examiner's report, and you need to analyze, to read and check carefully what does it mean, and make sure you address all the issue or comments. So you must prepare a checklist how you, based on the list of correction and how you respond. Yeah? What are your responses? Then proofread your work again. And if your thesis needs to resubmit, normally it will be read by internal examiners to check all the correction have done. Your supervisor also need to check before you submit the thesis to the faculty. Right? And it is very important for you to take note of the regulation, the procedure of submission, the duration based on major, minor correction, and number of copy of the thesis, the format. Okay. So, and finally, I want to share with you some of here are the 3 good references for you to read in terms of what examiners do, what thesis the student should know. Right? The first one. Second one is how to survive your Viva by Rowena Murray. She's very famous in UK. Doctoral examination process, a handbook for student, examiner, and supervisor. Yeah. Okay. So with that, that ends my discussion here. I open up for questions. Is there any questions to ask? I'm ready to take. The Viva normally, I have question from Xiaoli Hao. How long does a Viva usually take? Normally is you are given 30 to 40 minutes to present, and it depends on the examiners, what type of question they want to ask. It can last for the whole process, it can last for 2 to 3 hours depending. If your thesis sometimes your thesis show great interest to the examiner, they may ask you a lot of questions. Doesn't mean you're going to fail. Sometimes the thesis will take longer is because the students are not able to ask questions. So examiner have to rephrase again and ask again many times to determine the way you answer the question. But generally, if it's a good thesis, right, less questions, less problem, within 1.5 hours, you will finish. Yeah? Okay, any more questions? Do we have to attend the oral examination? No, you will go through normal process is you have to go through pre-viva defense held by the faculty. But before you have the pre-viva, I would strongly suggest that you have a mock viva with your supervisor, or you can even do it with among your colleagues, which of course you need to prepare question. I normally do it with my student, and I give them a list of potential question, common question that the examiner will ask. All right, any questions on this? Are you all clear? I hope my session will give you a little bit of insight what is oral examination or viva. Okay, if there is no question, don't be afraid of asking any questions if you're not clear.
Hello, doctor. I brought a couple of questions, but the other side, I think you didn't see it. The first question I have is, how long you are given for your initial presentation, doctor?
Normally depends on, you're given 35 to 40 minutes to present.
Initially, and the rest is questions.
Yes.
All right. My second question is, what if you are, for example, you are asked a technical question about the thesis, for example, the definition of the usage of an analysis tool, and what if this happens to be well written in the thesis, but it's not properly explained orally?
Okay, that's why do you have oral examination to verify whether the thesis that thesis has been written by you and whether you actually understand the concept, definition, or technical issue.
I understand.
Yes, good questions. So remember, oral examination is the examiner is trying to verify to what extent you understand all those literature review, theoretical underpinning, your contribution, and at the same time, we are trying to verify whether you actually have written this thesis or you pay somebody to write the thesis. and what is your how much you actually involved in the research process. Okay. All right. Any more questions? All right. If no questions, Elizabeth requests every one of us take a photo. So can I have your video open, please? Everyone, we'll take a group photo. Okay.
Okay, Prof. Okay, one.
Yeah.
Smile. Okay, smile. Freestyle.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Yeah, some of the students want the slides. I don't know how to send it to them. Would you be able to do it?
Just
Elizabeth?
email to me, Prof.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much. See you. Good luck in your oral examinations. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prof.
Prof.
Yeah. Hi, Mary.
Prof, how are you?
Fine, thank you. So I guess you should make it a interesting, enjoyable journey when doing your PhD.
Okay, sure, Prof.
Don't give yourself too much stress because you are training your mind to be critical. You're training your mind to be open. Your PhD is open mind. There's a lot of possibility, a lot of logical argument. You need to set up your logical argument. So once you got, you're very happy because you see it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye bye.
Professor, can I
Yeah.
have a question?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I'm Xiao Li Ho. Well, I
Okay.
have a lot of questions. Well,
Yes.
I think you are talking about before taking the Viva, we better take the pre-Viva. So I'm not quite sure what's the differences between pre-Viva and Viva.
Oh, pre-Viva means you are doing a mock. You are practicing. You
So
know.
I have to practice it with my supervisor, you mean?
Yeah, you can talk to your supervisor.
Okay.
You can practice yourself. You can also ask your friends, be an examiner. It's mock means you are practicing. Viva, during the Viva means you have your examiners with you, you have your supervisor, you have the chairman. So in Viva, for you to be, well, because if you are well prepared, you read your thesis very well, you're able to answer the question. So there will
Okay.
be less issue. When I did my PhD in UK, Scotland, we often practice. When my colleague due for Viva, we all try to challenge him or her, asking a lot of questions so that she will open the mind and more prepared, rather than waiting
Okay.
for examiner to ask you, is it? So because
Okay.
it's your work, you must master your work, know your work very well, and you can share with you, wherever you go. That was a culture among the PhD when we did at the Strathclyde University, and we find it very useful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
So we don't need to apply for the pre-Viva, we just need to practice before the Viva.
Yes, but you need to apply submission to go for Viva. There is a form. Your supervisor will tell you.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more? If not, I'm going to leave now. Thank you very much. Bye bye.